Well, when I kind of figured out what the business was all about, even before I got in the business, I made a huge mistake, and I told one of the wrestling managers, like a Jimmy Hart type manager.
Who's in studio, by the way.
Yeah,
the
right.
great Jimmy Hart is here, ladies and gentlemen.
Jimmy, shout out, man.
This is awesome, man. I love hearing this. This is great. And he's unbelievable. Am I
He's the
right or
best.
wrong? Help, before you say anything, before you tell the story, I've just got to tell you, I just took a little walk back in the studio, and they have a mustache wall in the back. In your studio, all the famous football, baseball, and number one is the Hulkster.
No way.
Yes.
Well, we should say, we're going to get into this later, but you are in St. Louis for
the mustache crazy event. I forget what it's called. The Foo Fest.
Yeah. Mike Shannon's.
Mike Shannon's restaurant. We're going to have that from 2 to 4 today, and we're going to try to break the world's record for the most Fu Manchus and mustaches in any one place at any given time. So I'm looking forward to the food, and if the kids come, we'll put fake mustaches on them. We'll figure something out, but yeah, that's what we're all about today.
All right, we'll take a short time out. Hulk, you take a drink. We're going to come back. We're going to talk about his great movie career. He was unbelievable in Rocky III, and talk about some of the great wrestlers he's encountered. This is the Press Box on 590 The Fan, KFNS. Frank Cusumano broadcasting live from KFNS in Webster Groves. Hulk Hogan in studio. Wrestling at the Chase as a kid was something really huge here with the great Sam Muchnick and Larry Matzik. Putting on those shows. Did you ever wrestle in St. Louis at Wrestling at the Chase?
Yeah, I actually, that's the first place I ever wrestled, was the Chase, and it was real intimidating because back in the day when wrestling was, small time, and there were Florida wrestling and Georgia and California and Texas wrestling, every couple months all the great wrestlers in the country would, converge on St. Louis. You had Harley Race and Pat O'Connor, Lou Thez, Jack and Jerry Briscoe, and it was kind of like a who's who of wrestling. So when you got booked in St. Louis, that was a bigger deal than Madison Square Garden. It really was the who's who of the wrestling business. So the first time I got booked in the Chase, it was a big deal. I was a nervous wreck. And then we went from there to the Kiel Auditorium and I think the Dome or some huge building. I can't remember the name of it. But Checkerdome, yeah. So there's a huge history here, and St. Louis has always been a hotbed for wrestling.
You started off as a good guy, and then you became a bad guy. Then the Andre the Giant thing made you a good guy again forever, or?
Well, I had a wrestling career that I started down south in Florida, and then I lasted for a little while there, and I didn't, like the wrestling business too much. I wasn't making any money, and I was working 7 days a week in Florida, and so I went back to working on the docks because I became a union laborer in between rock and roll bands, and then I went up to territory in northern Florida through Alabama, and I think I was making about $100 a week for wrestling 6 days a week there, and went back to Florida. Then one thing led to another, and finally, I just hit it. I made it big, and when you make it big, you go to New York. And when I first went to New York for Vince McMahon Sr., who passed away, God bless his soul, I was the bad guy. They were looking for someone to wrestle Andre the Giant, and I had a look back in the late 70s that no one else had. And so I was the guy, and I was the bad guy for, a couple of years up there. And then Vince McMahon Sr. fired me because I had a chance to do a movie, and I went to do the movie. So he
Rocky
fired
III,
me.
was that the one? Yeah,
right. And the mindset back then was pretty barbaric, and wrestlers are wrestlers, and there's no cross promotion or media crossover. And if you're a wrestler, you don't do commercials or television shows or anything like that. So it was just strange that I had a chance to be in the Rocky movie and I got fired for it.
But during the Andre the Giant fight, did you go from a good guy to a...
No. What happened was, when I first went to New York, I was the bad guy, and I was Andre's whipping boy, And then when I got fired, I went away, and I went back to Japan, because I loved wrestling in Japan, and I was always bouncing back and forth to Japan throughout my whole career. If I had 2 or 3 days off, I'd go back to Japan and wrestle. Then from there, I went to Minnesota, and I worked for a guy named Vern Gagne, who used to wrestle in St. Louis with Pat O'Connor, and I was there for 3 years, and I actually came in as a bad guy, and it was right after the Rocky movie, and they brought me as a bad guy to wrestle their hometown favorite boy, Jesse Ventura. And when I got in the ring with him, they just basically booed him out of the building. So I became a good guy then. And during that time, I wrestled 3 years. Then when I went back to New York, Vince McMahon took over, Vince Jr. And when I came in, I wrestled the Iron Sheik, and we had that huge political problem with Iran back then, and it was a perfect setting. I walked in, I was the instant hero. Hulkamania took off, and during that time, it was 3, 4, 5 years. Then I wrestled Andre the Giant in Pontiac Silverdome as the good guy, largest indoor attendance record, and that record stands today. 94,000 people.
What was it like tangling with Andre? And at his heaviest, when you lifted him, what do you think he was? I think you said 700 once.
Yeah, he's 698. We weighed him at the airport on those cargo scales,
And you
at the
lifted
airport.
that.
Yeah, I got him up, and I tore my back and tore both my biceps and my shoulder out, just with that one move, And
Did you like him personally?
I did, yeah, I did. We had a rocky relationship at first because there were no boots from Santa Claus and no wrestling schools, and when you got in the business, there was a certain camaraderie and unwritten code of ethics, and and there's a respect factor. And he saw that there would be an opportunity for me to be something, so he beat me up probably for the first 6 or 7 years. And then once I kind of won his respect over in Japan, I got in a few little tight situations over there. He says, "You're okay, boss." So. I became his guy, and we became good friends.
There was a story about the Iron Sheik, and people were upset with you, and the Iron Sheik was threatening to, or they wanted him to hurt you in the ring, but in the last moment he decided not to. I think it was also in the book.
Yeah, it was when I left Minnesota, the territory that Vern Gagne had. Vince McMahon, Vince Jr., took over for his father, or he said he did. And, he made me an offer I couldn't refuse to come back, wrestle the Iron Sheik. And he had a plan to make wrestling not territorial, but he wanted to take over the whole world. And he wanted to be at the helm of the ship while I was the guy that he wanted to send out in all the uncharted territories, the dangerous areas, the Kansas City where the Harley races were. And he was the only champion, only hero. And they sent me in everybody's backyard, and would say that I'm the only guy and only champion. It got testy, But what was the question? I forgot.
Well, no, about the Iron.
The Iron Sheik. No, I'm sorry. But when I left Minnesota, I was the top guy there, and I was, the Hulkamania thing had just started, and I was in all the main events all over. And when Vince McMahon and I talked, Vince Jr., who now runs the company, I went back to work for him. And when I got there, his dad was still running the company. It wasn't quite like he said, and Vern Gagne was really mad that I left. And the Iron Sheik was an amateur wrestler, and he was in the Olympics, and he was one of Vern Gagne's proteges, and Vern Gagne offered him $100,000 to break my leg in the ring, which my legs have been broken before, and they're by wrestlers on purpose. So this was just like a hitman for hire, and I guess the Iron Sheik decided not to go for it, because business-wise he would have been very short-sighted to try something like that. He would have been outcast from our business that's built on trust. But he decided to do the right thing and have the match and not pull those shenanigans that Vern Gagne wanted him to pull.
How often does it happen you get mad at a fighter who went too far in your mind, or a fighter got mad at you because you went too far? You didn't have to inflict that pain.
Well, it's not something that's a constant. I mean, it has happened a couple times in my career, and it's a situation where we give each other receipts. Like if you screw up and actually give me a black eye or knock my teeth out, you can expect a receipt. It's the code of ethics that we live by. Now a lot of the new guys, I can't speak for them because they're too busy on their Game Boys and their computers instead of,
training like they should.
Yeah. So I just don't know where it's at now, but the guys I'm working with now have the TNA, have the young talent has a ton of respect for each other.
What did Sylvester Stallone tell you when he was auditioning you for Rocky 3? What did he tell you to do to him?
Well, he asked me to hit me as hard as I could, and I said, I don't think that's a good idea, And he goes, and he was doing like a documentary, and he had all the cameras running. I pretty much knew what he was up to, and he goes, oh, well, yeah, give me 75%. I said, brother, I don't think, that's a good idea. And he goes, well, just hit me like you would another wrestler, but, give me about 50%. So I bent him over and hit him between the shoulder blades, the safest place I could hit him, and as soon as I hit him between the shoulder blades, his face hit my cowboy boots, and he just popped up, bleeding out of his nose and his mouth. He said, "Oh my God, that was great! You got the job." He was a different kind of cat, man. He loved the physicalities.
And what did playing the role of Thunderlips in Rocky 3 mean to your career? Did it help to